Hi, everyone. My name is Anastasia, and I'm the executive director with Navigate STL Schools. We're here today with Ari O. Benson. Am I saying your name correctly?
Correct.
Awesome.
Ariel
Ari,
Benson.
you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, my name is Ariel Benson, as you said, and I am. I'm. I always try to put this. I'm a husband and father, and I'm a lawyer by training. I I have lived in the St. Louis area since 2002, and I practiced a little bit of law in my home country, Cameroon, before moving to the United States, and worked for an international organization here in St. Louis called Junior Chamber International, where I did mostly strategy implementation for that organization around the world. So I had the opportunity to really travel around the world building that organization, and have been blessed to visit 106 countries around the world, and learned a lot in that journey. And now I'm also the author of a book called Bridging the Opportunity Gap, really that catalogs my leadership experience working for an international organization. And I'm currently the president and CEO of the International Institute of St. Louis since February 1st.
Awesome. So I want to start off with a question that we ask everybody. Tell us about your specific K-12 education story.
Well, my education story may be very different from the story of many Americans. And even if I put it in the context of Cameroon, because I was born in Cameroon, I grew up in Cameroon, I only moved here as an adult. So the context is really very different. Because education in Cameroon, many parts of the developing world, is not as sophisticated as it is out here. But it's primarily more rigorous. I went to primarily private schools, private and Catholic schools that were really, really run by sisters that were very, very disciplined. And I look at education here, and the education that my children are having, and I say it's a long way from the one that I had in Cameroon. But not to say that, the quality of the education I had in Cameroon was not good enough. It was just done in the context of all you had to do as a child was study. It was not the creativity, the work and play. All of that was not considered a factor. Did we do physical education? Yes, but we did it because we had to. But most of it was reading and arithmetic, and that's just the way that we were brought up in Cameroon at the time.
So we know that education in America, it looks very different than it does in a lot of countries. So when people are bringing their children over, what do you think is one of the most difficult things for them to understand and adjust to?
I think one of the fundamental differences, then I would say this to teachers that receive children from other parts of the world. In the education that in many of the developing countries around the world that we receive, the teacher is always right. For starters, the teacher runs the classroom. The teacher talks, you listen. The teacher gives instructions, you obey. That's the way the education is. And so there is a tendency, especially if you note from people who studied out of the country, to be conservative in their opinions. Not that they don't have opinions, but if you ask for their opinions, you'll hear it. But they would not volunteer their opinion. And it's just the way that education takes place in many parts of the world outside the United States. So a child could actually be sitting in class and probably be the brightest in class, but will not voice their opinion until they're prompted to do so. Mm-hmm. And for a teacher that has children from other parts of the world, that's something that they have to take upon themselves to help that child come out of the place where they are in, which is not a bad place, but just the environment in which they grow up in created that for them.
So we're getting a little bit ahead of ourselves. You said you were the president and CEO of the International Institute. Can you tell everyone what exactly the International Institute is and how it supports families?
Yes. Well, the International Institute, like I said, I started out in February. What I've learned about the International Institute, like every job that I take on, or anybody takes on a job, is to really learn the history of the organization. And what I've learned about the International Institute is that really for 100 years, it has been creating a pathway for immigrants to integrate society here in the United States. And they've done so essentially. It said that it started out by creating opportunities for women to integrate the workforce in the United States. Because women had come from Europe after the First World War who couldn't speak English. And the International Institute actually created that opportunity, and then over time expanded its services to now becoming really a resettlement agency, the only one in the region. So overall, I say the International Institute has as a mission to create a more inclusive St. Louis, one that is prosperous, welcoming, and healthy for everyone. And the way that we support families that come here is we help families resettle, from helping them find housing, find jobs, put their children into school, help them improve their English, so that could help them really integrate society and contribute to the development of society here. With reference to children, one of the things that we do is really collaborating with the school districts to help children bridge the gap between where they are from the countries that they come from to how they really catch up with the education here in the United States. And this could be working with the St. Louis School District, for example, with the school called Nahid Chapman, to bring the young children, kids up to speed, providing after-school programs for these children that helps them catch up, say, with their reading skills, and holiday camps as well for these children. So we also do something called Bridge to College, so really helping them prepare for college, especially those that come here in high school.
So I actually recently had the opportunity to visit the International Institute and do a tour of the facility. Can you tell us what inspires you about the work that you do, but also what is something that you encountered that was really unexpected or significant as to the work that you're doing?
Well, I was talking about the story about people coming from different parts of the world. The history of St. Louis actually is one that is profoundly written by people coming from different parts of the world. And with each generation, the arrivals have been different. And the Institute started about, just post First World War. And what had happened at the time in St. Louis and around the world, it was the end of the First World War. A lot of men had gone to war. We had lost a lot of men in war. But also a lot of people were fleeing persecution from Europe and coming to settle in St. Louis. But when they came, the men went to work and the women stayed at home. And because we needed more people in the workplace, the opportunity was to bring in women into the workforce. But those women who had come from Europe couldn't speak English. And so the International Institute started providing training for them, English language training, and then realized that, the more people came, the more there was need for integration, because every time you have a wave of people that speak a different language, that come from different parts of the world, it creates some kind of friction in society. And so the International Institute was really trying to showcase these different cultures that came from different parts of the world, so that people here could embrace those cultures and they create this kind of harmony in society. And that continues today. And I think that we are at that point almost where the mission of the organization is just as relevant now as it was in 1919, because we're talking now with the Afghans coming into the United States, but we're talking also at a point where we've had really 4 years of challenging administration, where it was really immigration was very challenging. Now, immigration continues to provide support to the American economy, and when we don't have immigrants coming into the country, it stagnates our economy, and particularly in the city of St. Louis, we need to continue welcoming immigrants because that's where we have the opportunity for growth. So what inspires me about the work that we do is that ability to build a more inclusive St. Louis, to showcase the rich diversity of cultures that we have in this community, and to help people understand that the only way that we're going to flourish as a society is if we embrace these rich cultures and make them mainstream and give them an opportunity to participate in the development of this community. That's what inspires me about our work.
That is so cool. On my visit, it was really enlightening to just hear the ways that refugee and immigrants are really acclimating to society, especially life in St. Louis, which is different than a lot of the places where people are coming from. But on that tour, we talked, and our group really learned, like, what is the difference between an immigrant family and a refugee family for people who don't know, and how are people being resettled into the St. Louis community?
Great. One thing I always like to highlight to people is that one of the things that we do is resettlement for refugees, but our work extends beyond resettlement. We support immigrants, we help immigrants integrate. So a refugee is somebody that is fleeing the country because of a conflict. And the journey of refugees are really long and complicated. These are people who are fleeing a conflict in their country. I'll pick a country like Sudan, for example. And because of the war, they flee their country, they go into a third country, and in that third country, they are put into a camp, which is usually what we call a refugee camp. Sometimes they could spend 10, 15, 20 years in that camp. So their children who are born, who go into these camps at the age of 2 and only arrive to the United States at the age of 25. They've spent most of their childhood life living on these camps. And the reason why they spend that long is just process. It takes a lot of vetting. The United States, it takes 3 to 8 years to just vet somebody to move to the United States. So their journey is one that is really, really incredibly long and treacherous. But when they do get here, all of that time they spend in the camp, the only thing that they want is a place called home that is peaceful because they're fleeing a conflict. So the United Nations High Commission for Refugees actually administers these camps and works with various countries, about 12 countries around the world that have accepted to welcome refugees, and the United States happens to be one. So there is always what we call a presidential designation each year, where the president says, we are willing to take 100,000 or we're willing to take 15,000, whatever the number is. And the State Department works with the UN High Commission for Refugees to bring those people here. It could be an individual, and his families, because that's how they flee the conflict, and they're brought here. And once they are designated to the United States, they have agencies in the United States. For example, one of them is called the U.S. Commission for Refugees and Immigration that works with cities across the United States that have resettlement agencies. And the International Institute of St. Louis happens to be one of those. And so we have this contract where we welcome these refugees, and we have certain guidelines that we have to, based on this contract, that we have to support them. Mm-hmm. Housing being primarily one, equipping that housing, ensuring that we're creating a path for them to be integrated into society, a medical assessment, a test for English language, and helping them get English language, and all of these things. Children, ensuring that we have these children in school within the first week of arrival, and we work with them for a 3-month period. And post that 3-month period, we have a host of other programs that can help them to continue growing within this community, and we support them for at least for about a 5-year period, depending on what the need is. We have even a community development corporation that provides small loans for those that are entrepreneurial. We provide financial literacy classes, credit building loan programs that help them grow, because when you come from another country, you don't have a credit history. So you're starting with nothing, and we need to help them grow in that regard. So there's all these programs that are provided to them. Now, that's for refugees. But any immigrant who comes to this community that comes from somewhere else can come to the International Institute, and there are programs that we offer. The other day I met a lady from Argentina who has just moved here. It's an architect, can't speak English. She really wants to go into her profession as an architect, and she had her little son with her. And we did an intake because we're going to help her. First, we're going to help her speak English, because when she speaks English, then she can go into her profession. But whilst we're providing English language classes for her, we're already going to be trying to match her skill sets with a job opportunity that can help her begin to take steps to grow into her profession as an architect. And in the meantime, we can also provide support to our son in English language classes, or how we can integrate him into the school district. So that's what we do for any immigrant. The Community Development Corporation I spoke about provides that kind of support. But even more importantly than these programs, is why we do it. Why is it important that we have an agency in this community? Because people will always come to this community. And when people come, we want them to be successful. Because when people are successful, the community is successful. That's why we do it. And that's really the important part, because that defines other things that we do. That's why we do the Festival of Nations, because we want to showcase the rich diversity of this community. And that's why we talk a lot about inclusion, because we want people to see that these are not just immigrants, these are not just refugees, these are our friends, our neighbors. The children go to the same school as our own children. They too will one day run for office in this community. And how we receive them really determines how they thrive in this community.
So how are people selecting St. Louis to settle down in?
Well, I would say immigrants go where immigrants go, right? If you look at the history of St. Louis, you would see the Germans came in groups, the Italians came, the Irish came in groups, the Vietnamese came in groups. So people go where other immigrants go. So we know that the Bosnian community in St. Louis is probably the largest outside Bosnia. But that's because the first people who came here had a good experience. And when people are welcomed, they remember that. Mm-hmm. And they say that to their friends, to say that to other people, and other people come. That's the role that we play, is trying to position St. Louis as a welcoming community where people can come from other parts of the world and prosper. I know that many people come here because of the education, because we have good universities here. So many people come from across the world to study here, and we have to figure out how we keep them here. And the only way we're going to keep them here is doing simple things like showcasing where you can find food from your country. It may sound trivial, but it's really important for people who have come a long way to be in this community. And that's the role that we play here, is showcasing that multicultural side of St. Louis, because that's welcoming for people, and that's why people come.
But like for refugees, they get assigned here, correct?
Refugees typically don't have the luxury of choosing where many of them discover St. Louis because it's offered to them as an opportunity to move here. So for them, they don't necessarily have the choice of choosing. They have the choice, though, of staying, because after a period of time, they can go somewhere else. They can go to where they have other relatives from their or friends, or where there's a huge community from their country or their culture. And our task is keeping them here.
So how can we help? How can the school communities and the neighborhood support new families that are coming into their regions, into their schools?
I said the first thing, and I heard this from somebody yesterday, that one of the who came from Bosnia about 25 years ago, who said something like one of the most effective ways to help is to be welcoming. Let children who are in school with children who have come from somewhere else be welcoming. Help them understand this community. People who come from different parts of the world typically have no imagination of the challenges that they can face when they come here. It looks glamorous on the outside, but actually living here, there are practical challenges if you didn't grow up here. And I think the first thing I would say to the St. Louis community is be welcoming, show empathy, walk in the shoes of those who have come here, donate when you can, volunteer when you can, and help us define St. Louis as a welcoming community. To the school districts, I would say, walk in the shoes of these children. We would ask for a little bit more attention because it would definitely take a while for them to catch up. But by just helping them catch up, you would find that, behind the shyness is incredible talent. And we need to unleash those talents, because that's what will make us even more prosperous as a community. Is this diversity in perspective and talent.
That's really great. You mentioned this going to school part. Tell us about your partnership with SLPS and any plans that you might have to help expand into other communities that are seeing a large population of immigrant and refugees in our region.
We've had a great partnership with the St. Louis School District in several areas, whether it is preparing the children for school, but I think the greatest of all has really been in terms of ESL, English training, where we've had for many, many years significant number of teachers from the school district actually help with volunteer with training in English language for adults that have come here that need to go into the workplace. And we because they have the capacity, that they are an educational institution, they have really helped in designing and developing and implementing these English language courses. And that I think has been great. The collaboration with Nahid Chapman has really been good in bridging the gap between the children who come here and how we integrate them in the school district. And we just have started having a conversation with other school districts. I know the Pattonville School District has picked up on that, and we're hoping that other school districts are coming up to speed, because with the arrivals now, we're seeing that it's going to have to extend beyond the city of St. Louis. But this experience that we have with the St. Louis public school district could be one that is replicated in other parts of the city or county.
You mentioned that school is just different because teachers are the authority. I would imagine that lots of things are different, like catching a bus or grocery shopping. And I know that those things are like difficult to learn and to adjust to. But the school system in St. Louis is also very, very different with all of the options. What are things that you think that immigrant and refugee families can consider when they're looking for a school for their kid?
I think the first thing they would want to look at is access, right? These families, when they come, have one thing in mind: they want to succeed, and they want to provide a better for those that have children, a better future for their children. Right? Those two things they would give everything. For those. So their first point of consideration is having the school schedule work with their work schedule. I think that is really important because they need to fend for themselves at this to ensure that those children go to school. But at the same time, they want to make sure that the children are in school as they fend for themselves. So that would be the primary first consideration. Again, this is one thing that the St. Louis School District, by trying to provide child care, has been very, very helpful because parents can go to work whilst the children are taken care of. So that cost of early education, which we know is is very expensive, is one of the things that they would consider, and one of the reasons why we try to keep our clients in the city of St. Louis, because they offer that for free. So for me, I think those are the primary considerations. Now, as the children grow older, then parents begin to care about what part of the city the children are in, because for immigrants and refugees, it's education that they see as the key to the success of their families, and are typically very rigorous with the children on this aspect.
So my last question for you today is, you mentioned diversity in our community being one of the things that's going to make us richer and better. As parents are considering navigating schools, immigrant parents, refugee parents, St. Louis City parents, what is one thing that they should know about going to school with kids that are different from their own?
I think that the parents have a role in understanding that diversity is really a strength, and I consider it a responsibility of the International Institute to help this community understand that diversity is really what has made this country stand out in the world. And sometimes we have the tendency to highlight the challenges that come with diversity, that we fail to see what the opportunities are. But the opportunities are all around us. That the rich history of this city, of this community, is as rich as it is because people came from different parts of the world and made it what it is. And that the future of this city is going to largely depend on how we have that cultural mix. And we need to educate parents, because parents have to educate their children. But I also say to children, if children are listening to this, that they too have to educate their parents, because they have the experience of sitting in the same classroom with a child or a boy that comes from Cameroon, and sharing the same meals and having the same experience. And I guess for that child, they're just seeing a friend. They're not seeing some order. They're just seeing a friend, and they're collaborating and working together. And if we could have the beauty of that classroom in this community, then we would have a more prosperous community. And I think that's what we have to convey from parent to child and child to parent.
Thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure talking to you.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.